Welcome back, guys. Today I want to continue our brass tests for 223 and 556. If you missed the last video, we picked out 5 different head stamps of 223 and 556 brass, loaded them all up with an identical load, went and shot them, and we took some readings of case weight, average case weight, and how much that deviated. We measured case capacity and how much that deviated. We measured velocity. The standard deviation of the velocity. Of course, we measured group size. So we just kind of looked at the results and tried to come to as many conclusions as possible. We had 2 test guns in that video. This was our target, right? If you remember this crazy stuff, and we had velocity, and we were talking about case capacity and whatnot. The results were interesting, and we'll review some of the results from video 1 at the end of this once we get some results from these additional head stamps that I want to test. From the first test, I think I proved to myself, at least in a preliminary manner, that the 2 guns I tested with showed similar trends with the different brass. So I want to switch to just using 1 test gun, but I want to do 10-shot groups this time to maybe get a better idea about accuracy. 5-shot groups weren't quite enough for me to feel comfortable coming to conclusions on accuracy. So I want to shoot 10-shot groups. We're going to use my Colt 556 AR LE6920. And otherwise, we're going to try to duplicate the previous test just with 7 new head stamps. So let me run through the head stamps for you real quick. All right, here's the brass lineup for today's video. See if I can get these without too much glare. The first here is Federal 223. The last video we did Federal 556. So this is the 223 head stamp. Next up is very glary. Oh, this is Remington RP 223 head stamp. Next is PPU 223. WCC 556. Unfortunately, with the WCCs, I wasn't able to match up all of the dates. So you can see, like, there's a 13, there's an 09, so there's a 12, I think. So unfortunately, I didn't have enough to match the dates, but it's good enough to test with. Next is Perfecta 223. And let's see, next tray. First up is Lake City. These are all 13s. So Lake City 13 556 and PSD 556. And those are all PSD 14s. So there we go. PSD, Lake City, Perfecta, WCC, PPU, Remington, and Federal. So there's another factor that is very important when grading brass, I guess we could call it, and that is the flash hole and whether or not that flash hole is centered. Let me see if I can get you a picture of this guy. This is an example of one that has a very out of center flash hole. If you can't read it, this is a Perfecta. And looking at these 7, Perfecta is the only one that has just awful out of center, off-centered flash holes. All of the others seem okay. including PPU. The PPUs are fine. And one thing I'm wondering about this PPU, this did come from a box of their match ammo. This stuff shot really well in my gun. Like this was a surprisingly accurate ammo for me. So I don't know whether their match stuff has any better brass than the cheaper stuff. We may, we'll look into that later. But later on in the video, at the end, once we're kind of looking over the results, I'll pull out the brass from last time and inspect those flash holes. I know that PMC had some that were off center, but I'm pretty sure that Norma, Wolf, the Federal 5.56, and Hornady, which were the others we tested last time, were all centered okay. But I'll pull those out later and we'll verify it, and we'll make that an additional check that we do on this brass as we test. I don't know if this will be the last one, the last video, or whether we'll just keep on going with this. It probably depends on what we find and what we're able to conclude from the data. We're using the same load as last time, which is 23 grains of AR comp with CCI number 41 primers and 69. Yep. Should have seen that coming. All right, stay closed. 69 grain Sierra Match Kings. So that's our bullet, that's our powder, that's our primer. These cases have already been prepped. I resized all of them. They've obviously been wet tumbled. These are all just range pickups, except for the PPU that I showed you. I don't think I shot any of these originally. So these are all range pickups. So they were all wet tumbled and then resized, trimmed. Military crimps were removed from the ones that were crimped, and the case mouths were chamfered and deburred. So these guys are ready for primers. That's what I'm going to be doing next. I'll probably skip over the vast majority of the reloading steps here like I did in the last video and just get them knocked out, and we'll get out to the range and shoot them. Okay, so as promised, we have skipped over most of the loading here. Just finishing up the last of the bullet seating right now. And I just boogered up that one a little bit. It's not bad. Make sure I didn't jam it down into the case or something. Nope, 2.260. Still good. All right. 20 in this box. 50 in this box. So let's get out and see how they shoot. Okay, 70 rounds of ammo to shoot, so let's get started. I am using my Colt upper, my Colt LE6920 upper, but I have switched out the lower for my the one that's normally on my 16-inch 300 Blackout, and that's to take advantage of the better trigger here. So I've got, this has a CMC 3.5 pound trigger, which should do a little bit better than the factory Colt lower. I've been shooting a few shots through it to make sure it's sighted in, so the gun's warmed up, ready to rock. So let's start out. Our first brass to test is Lake City. 10-shot groups. We are at 100 yards. Okay, next up is WCC. All right, our next contender is Federal 223. Okay, fourth up is PSD. Okay, next up is Perfecta. I'll tell you, all of these, I seeded them probably a little bit too long. Almost all of them are dragging the nose on the magazine just a little bit. Not a huge deal. It's been okay, but if we happen to have a failure to feed or something, that might be why. Okay, PPU 223. Okay, last up, Remington Peters, RP. All right, overall, I see a whole lot of consistency. So let's get to the bench, see what we can make of this. So I've been just sitting here staring at the wall because I'm not sure how to explain what I need to explain here. I've got a lot of data and I'm not sure which conclusions I can come to and then support it with actual good information. So let's just dive into it. I took all 70 of the cases that we fired in this video. I weighed them, and I also weighed, then filled them full of water and weighed them full of water to get an idea of how much water they hold, just like the last video. So I've got case weight, case capacity in grains of water, and of course we've got velocity and standard deviation as well. Let's look at the target. There's our target. Nothing really jumps out. So all of the groups were, so our best group was WCC at an inch, or no, I'm sorry, it was PPU at 1.3 inches, WCC at 1.5 inches, and then up, our worst one was Perfecta. I'll tell you, the one thing I'll say is Perfecta's crap. Those flash holes being way off centered, they were bad. Well, I showed it at the beginning of this video, and I pulled out the 50 rounds we had shot from the last video, those other 5 different head stamps, and the only one that has any issue with off-centered flash holes is PMC, and it is not nearly as bad as Perfecta. Perfecta is terrible. PMC, it's just slightly off-centered sometimes, a few cases. So PMC I can almost give a pass, but the Perfecta, yep, I won't be shooting Perfecta. And you can see it was the worst group of this video, but just like the eyeball test, looking at the group, it wasn't even trying to group. It just wasn't even trying to group. So Perfecta gets a thumbs down. Here's the next thing I want to show. So PPU and WCC were our 2 best groups. So they not only look like the best, like from the eye test, looking at which ones we're trying to group. PPU and WCC were definitely the ones trying their best to group. And then of course, and then they were also the smallest on the ruler, 1.3 inches and 1.5 inches. If we go to the previous target, the video, or the target from the previous video, the 2 best groups in this batch were Federal 556, Federal 2013 head stamp 556, and Wolf. So those were our 2 best groups. So I'll come back to this, but PPU, WCC, Federal 556, and Wolf. Now, I want to show you guys a chart. And this is all of the brass we shot and I've got them sorted by case capacity. So you can see the smallest case capacity was Norma. The green in the middle, that's case capacity. The smallest case capacity was Norma, and the largest case capacity were PMC and Remington. If you look, there's a group of them that all have a case capacity of 30.6 grains of water. Federal 556, PPU, WCC, and Wolf. Those are our 4 best groups. Those are the 4 head stamps that shot the best. What that tells me is this load I was using, 23 grains of AR comp with a 2.260 overall length, shoots the best with a case capacity of 30.6. Those were the only four head stamps that had a 30.6 grain water case capacity, and they were the four best shooting groups. Now, if we go back to previous video, the worst shooters were PMC and Norma, which was really weird. Norma's excellent brass, but it shot one of the biggest groups last time. And, and so did PMC. If we go back to the chart, you can see Norma is the smallest case capacity, so it's 0.4 of a grain off on case capacity from our 30.6 golden loads. And what I say, PMC is that's the biggest case capacity, 30.9. So that's 0.3 of a grain bigger, more case capacity. So I think all I've really done here, proven to myself maybe, is that if you got a load worked up and you're looking to switch head stamps, case capacity is pretty critical, right? Or if you take one of your favorite loads and load it up into some brass, some new brass or something, and it doesn't shoot, that might be what's going on. It seems that just like we have a small window of charge weight that works best for us, that needs to be paired up with a specific case capacity of our brass. What that brings me to is most of the group size is probably not all that relevant. Right? So Lake City shot pretty poorly. 1.9 inch group. I know Lake City brass shoots great. So I think it's just a matter of this load. So Lake City, let's see, what was it? It's 30.7, so it's just a touch more case capacity than the ones that shot the best. So maybe, another 1/10 or 2 of powder charge would tighten those guys up and bring them in line with these. So that's kind of what, I'm struggling here to gather my thoughts. I really am. With such a limited amount of shots, I think we can only really make the broadest of conclusions, and none of them shot terrible. Even Perfecta with its super goofy flash holes, it was still respectable, but that's a good enough reason for me to say I'm not going to use that. But all of the others shot respectable. They absolutely shot respectable. So if we go back to the chart here, velocities were all kind of, whatever. The shots, or, the head stamps from the last video, we were working on 5-shot groups. So like that PMC was the lowest velocity, and it had that really good standard deviation number of 3.9. I think that was probably a fluke. Velocity this time didn't, like the last video, it seemed to clearly trend with case capacity. And it still kind of does, but there are a few exceptions to that rule. But looking at the chart, I guess you could say that, the smaller case capacity had the higher velocities for the most part, except for a couple outliers. I was happy with all of the, the case weights varied from Norma at 102 grains all the way down to Remington 94.8 grains. All of them were pretty darn consistent. Looking at the standard deviation of case weight, not bad. Less than a grain, all of them. So nothing to get excited about there. So the case capacity tells me that, it is worthwhile to separate your head stamps. And anytime you're caring about accuracy at all, to just try and shoot the same head stamp if you possibly can. Just from, the varying group sizes we saw here with the same load. I think that's useful. So I guess that's about it. I kind of feel like I'm limping home here. No earth-shattering conclusions were come to, but I think we've at least proven that just about any 223 or 556 brass out there will get the job done for you. Watch out for goofy flash holes, and otherwise just, you know, match up head stamps and go out and shoot good groups. So I think that's it. We'll go ahead and wrap this up. I don't have any more testing planned unless you guys bring up some good questions or come up with, you know, things I did wrong or things that need tested further. But at this point, I think we're good, and I feel pretty good about using whatever freaking brass that's laying around as long as it has good flash holes. So, all right, I will see you guys next time.